him his Jesus. Just interrupt my whole conversation. Yeah, and I just followed him his whole career. And I went to when he was in Cleveland the first time, I remember him taking those teams to the finals or whoever he took, and then it was like he had the decision when he went to Miami, and everybody hated him.
Yep.
I was like, God damn, like, how did this happen? This guy was like beloved, and then everybody hated him because he decided to do that. And then I just kept riding with him, and eventually he won. And then I got to go to Game 7 of the NBA Finals against the Warriors when it was the Cavaliers versus the Warriors. So I was at that game. It was insane. LeBron came and blocked the shot, and then Kyrie Irving hit the game winner. It was nuts.
Yeah, it must have been sick.
And people are mad at me because I'm from the Bay Area, and I was in Oakland, like rooting for the opposite team. So it was kind of weird because I'm a Raiders fan, and everyone's like, "How could you not root for the Warriors?" I'm like, LeBron, man, he has power over every other team. So currently it's the Lakers, but if the Lakers don't win, I'd be happy if the Sixers won. I'd be cool with that.
You got to say it, man. At least on this call. You know what I mean?
Yeah, just so we can seem like we're pals.
There you go.
Yeah. That's crazy. You played soccer. I can't believe I didn't realize that.
Yeah, I played like everybody else. I played everything, but soccer is just kind of what I was good at. And like in between, I wrestled for a couple of years and did all those things, but soccer was just always kind of what I excelled at. So I stuck with it.
And do you follow like professional soccer, or you?
I don't, man. I never was a fan of it. I just played it. I'd play for 3-4 teams at a time and play for my school and do all that. But I was never into watching it. I mean, I like all sports, man, but football is my mecca. I don't know if that's just because I'm from Philly or if it's because, it's just what I love. But, I can list off anything you want to know about football, but try me on other sports and, you'll lose me pretty quick.
Yeah. My one highlight in soccer as a kid was when I was like probably 8 years old. I played in a co-ed game. They put me at goalie, and I was so sick and tired of it because I wanted to score that I just ran down the whole field as a goalie and scored. I literally got the ball and dribbled. It was co-ed. Obviously, it was not very challenging, but that's like my highlight. I tell people about that, and they're really impressed.
Put the team on your back.
I don't tell them it's co, and I don't tell them I was 8. Those are probably two things that would be necessary to say. But all right, everybody, welcome to our national leaders call. We're very excited today. It's crazy. It's been 9 weeks since we started doing this thing. We've had an array of amazing speakers. Today, we are really, really pumped up because Austin Eldredge, who's going to be speaking about a topic today, which I think is critical for our business, but specifically it's going to be critical for this time of year, as we're going to see a huge influx of recruits, whether it's college graduates, people looking to change careers. Each one of these topics has importance, but obviously for you guys to go from leadership or top leaders, or if you're a new leader, into the next phase of our business, which is management, getting to run an office and eventually build an organization like you see the speakers doing. You got to be good at retention, and you got to be good at getting people into the right mindset and having those conversations. So we're very excited about this topic, and there couldn't be a better person to run it. Austin, thanks so much for hopping on the call today. To go over your background a little bit, I know you started off in Jersey, but before the business, because we talked about this yesterday, you were in the military and you served in the Marines. Is that correct?
Yep, Marine Corps.
So you were in the Marine Corps for 4 years, and then you served in the reserves for a couple of years. After that, I mean, you were in the military. Obviously, that builds tons of great habits, and it gives you that structure. What attracted you to our business, and what got you to stick to this and become so successful at it?
Yeah, well, I mean, so for me, when I joined the Marine Corps, military was always an option for me. I didn't know what I wanted to join until I was about 17. And, I had friends that were in the Marine Corps and they were deployed when I was a senior in high school. So, I talked to them when they're on deployment, and I was like, man, I got to get over there. So, I went to a recruiter, talked to the recruiter. My mom signed off on it. And my thing was just kind of like a naive teenager. I was like, I got to be in the infantry. I want to fight. That's what I want to do. So I actually dropped out of high school, enlisted. And then, the next year went to boot camp, was in the infantry, deployed. And when I got done, that skill set doesn't necessarily translate to the civilian world unless I wanted to, try to be a police officer or something like that. But that wasn't really what I wanted to do long term. And, to be frank with you, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I just know I didn't want to go into law enforcement. And where I'm from in Southern New Jersey, it wasn't necessarily the most, economically friendly place in the world. So I didn't have a ton of options. I remember it being a struggle just to, get an interview at a warehouse. Right. So, I got lucky at the time, or I thought. My mom was good friends with a guy who was a manager at a debt collecting firm. And so she got me in there. She got me an interview, but they gave me the job, and I was like so grateful and so excited and so gung ho about it. I was like, all right, man, I'm going to be a hard charger. I'm going to be the best at this. And I went through training. Everything was great. But then, I got a couple of weeks into it, man. And it was like they put you on this automated dialer that just automatically connects you to people. And I would say 95, 98% of them, they're like, listen, I've told you 12 times, like, this is not so-and-so. And, I lost my attitude really quick, and, I was like, man, I can't do this. So I told my manager 6 or 7 weeks in, like, look, this isn't for me. And I left, but I didn't want my mom to know that, because she had, put her name out there to get me the job in the first place. So she was at home. I was literally hiding up in my room because I didn't want her to know that I had quit, and she thought I was at work at the time. So as soon as I got an opportunity, I snuck out the window. I ran around the corner to my friend Freddie's house, and I was like, dude, I need a job. I got to find something. And he was like, all right, man, well, do you have a resume? And I was like, no, I don't have a resume. He's like, all right, well, we got to make one. So we went on to Word, pulled up one of those templates, and I just kind of put Austin Eldredge, my address, and Marine Corps. And I started pumping it out to CareerBuilder. And I, within like 5 minutes, I was getting all these calls. And I was like, dude, like, this is crazy. Like, schools for fools. Like, I'm the man. Why do people even study? And what was crazy is that night, I was going to work out with my friends, and I got a call from a telemarketing company. And, they were like, hey, look, we saw your resume and we thought it was great. And I was like, see, that's what I'm saying. You don't need to go to school. And they were like, look, we do telemarketing. We're paying 15 an hour plus commission. And, to me, that was like a godsend. I was like, that's amazing. That's exactly what I want. So they set me up for an interview the next day. And the woman on the phone told me that they'd send me out a confirmation email. I was refreshing my phone for like an hour looking for it, and I never found it. So I figured I just screwed up and said something wrong at the end of the conversation, and they decided not to give it to me. So I never went to that interview. But the very next morning, Maddie called me, and she scheduled me for an interview with them. It was about 40 minutes away, but I was looking for anything. And it's crazy because had I gone to that telemarketing company for the interview, I probably never would have, met, Maddie and Ken and started out there. But that's how I got started.
That's awesome. And, we were talking, and you've had an awesome sort of run here. You started in Jersey. You were one of the first promotions out of the East Coast in the power modeling program. You promoted 4 guys, and then you kind of had a point where maybe a lot of people would have given up on the business, because you moved all the way out to California. You started a whole new program called, was it called?
Zero Energy. Yep.
Zero Energy. That's right. Zero Energy. And, it was going good at first, and then changes had to happen. And then basically the program stopped and you had to pick up something new. And you just kind of have this mentality of like, I'm going to figure it out and I'm not afraid of the problems. And you got into Verizon out in California, which eventually became Frontier. And so you went from Jersey to Chicago. Now you're here on the West Coast, and you're doing a great job. I mean, you got 6 offices, you got 2 or 3 more assistant managers on deck, pushing for, regional consultant by the end of the year. And you're telling me that, you always look at things and you expect challenges. And I asked you where that stemmed from. You said you've always had a chip on your shoulder. Can you kind of go over where that chip comes from, and why, when you got into this business, you've sort of become this guy that's so consistent compared to other people?
Yeah, I mean, I know we talked about it yesterday. It took me a while to figure out where that came from, but it was really my upbringing, man. So, unfortunately for us, I have 2 younger brothers and an older sister, and we were raised in Virginia until I was about 4 or 5, and my dad left us. So we were kind of left high and dry. And my mom's family was in New Jersey. So, we lost our house out there, and we had to kind of move back and, get closer to the family so that they could help out. But we were homeless for 2 years. And, I even remember my mom sneaking us into the hospital because she's a NICU nurse. And I remember her sneaking us into the hospital and like telling us to be quiet and like hide in this like room where they would store things and sleep on these, whatever they're called, the table, the beds. So I remember doing that and just trying to scrape by, and, seeing how hard my mom worked to get us into a house eventually after a couple of years, and, always worked really hard. And, obviously we weren't very wealthy. We were actually way below that, but, my mom always took care of us. And, I always looked at that and said, man, like I gotta give it back, and I gotta make sure that, I have a better life that I can provide for, my mom if she ever needs it, or, my family. Because look, I think it helped me to have that drive. But, obviously now being a father, I've got a 16-month-old daughter, and I'll have another daughter in August. So, I wanted to be able to provide a better lifestyle and, be able to take care of my mom and give back if she ever needed it. I mean, she doesn't need it right now. And I'm not one of those guys that's like, hey, I got to buy her a house. She doesn't need a house, and she probably would, smack me if I tried to buy her one. But, I want to be able to take care of her, and really, I want to be able to take care of my wife and take care of my kids, and, give them a great lifestyle, and, show them that, whatever they work towards, they're going to be able to accomplish it.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure your mom is very proud, and it's exciting to hear that you're raising a family and you got a daughter, another baby on the way. So congratulations on all your success. Austin, you have an incredible topic today, retention, right? And we've been talking about that a lot on all the calls, and I know you're really, really excited about this topic. So guys, if you're on this call, please take notes, ask questions, put the questions in the chat. If we can answer them between slides, we will, but if not, we're going to answer them at the end. All right, Austin, the floor is yours.
All right. Thanks, man. Yeah, and I think this is really important, guys. And obviously May and June are a really, really big time of recruiting for our business. But generally speaking, right, like, if you can't, initially retain your people and start that cycle of development, then you're never going to have a team and you're never going to get to the next level. So really, really important topic. The first part of it I wanted to talk about is going to be building relationships. So, obviously, people don't really care about how much you know until they know how much you care about them. And, one thing that really hit me hard when I first started, and I'm pretty sure it was Ken that told me this, was that people start because of you, but they stay because of the opportunity. So initially people are going to buy into you and, your leadership style, before they really fully understand the opportunity. And that's what long-term keeps them in. So understanding, how upfront to build that relationship and do it in the right way. And the first thing is always going to be learning, what not only motivates them, but what interests them, and, trying to find common ground. And there's so many things that you can learn about somebody. For me, that was one of my favorite things, was every time that I had a new guy on my team, and even now it's like a blank canvas where they're just unique. They have different backgrounds, they have different motivations, different interests, and different strengths and weaknesses. So, I'm always trying to dig deeper into that. A big thing to understand and building that initial relationship is, you want to do a lot more listening than you want to do talking. You want to just dig deeper and deeper and deeper on everything, passions, hobbies, sports, music, foods, any likes or dislikes that they have. And, at the end of the day, obviously you want to take a genuine interest, even if, I hear a lot of leaders all the time, and, they'll study different things, and they'll, try to learn new industries. I remember for me, when I started to train, females, I was like looking into cosmetics and things like that because I didn't know anything about it. And I think it's a natural thing for us to do. But, we all have to understand as well that you don't have to know, everything that they like, or you don't have to know about it. And you don't have to have done it either. But if you take a genuine interest in the things that they like or the things that they're into, they're going to be more bought into you as a person in general. You guys have to understand that trust equals information. So the more that somebody trusts you, the more information that they're going to give you. And that's super important, obviously, in the beginning when you're retaining people, because, we've all had those times where, we think everything's going great, but then the next day or on a Monday, they just all of a sudden don't show up. And, that didn't come out of nowhere, guys. I mean, there were things that they were concerned about, or there were people that were in their ear giving them concerns. But if they didn't trust us enough to give us that information, then, we probably would have never known. But on the flip side of that, had they felt comfortable with us, had they trusted us, then they would have told us, and they would have opened up about the concerns they had. So, when it comes to building that trust, I mean, obviously one thing that, we need to understand as leaders is we have to be ourselves. We have to be genuine. And, we've all been there, right? Like, we're trying to do all the right things. We get so excited when we finally get this new guy or girl on our team, and all we want to do is impress them. All we want to do is, make sure that everything's done perfectly so that we can retain them. But sometimes that comes off as disingenuous, and people can read through that. People can tell when you're being yourself, and they can tell when you're putting on a show. And you got to make sure that you're just staying true to who you are, so that they understand that, and that they're more willing to talk to you and open up to you, right? And you want to make them feel comfortable around you. You want to humanize yourself. You don't ever want to come off as this gung ho. I was born and built for this. Like, I'm a Spartan. I was raised for this since I was 6 months old. Like, you want them to understand like, hey, like these are the problems I had. These are the challenges I had. These are the ways that I viewed things when I came into the training program. I specifically remember when I was in Chicago, I was settling all my guys up one night and I was talking to this new guy who was 3 days in, and you could just tell he had field face. He was frustrated, and I just kind of took the initiative and related to him, and I was like, "Hey, man, look, I'll tell you straight up what happened to me in my first couple of days, and I lost my attitude. I wanted to quit. I wanted to give up. I didn't think I was ever going to be able to do it." And his response, like his jaw kind of dropped, and he was like, "That's insane, man." He's like, "I thought that all of you guys were just kind of born for this, and this was like your calling." I was like, "No, man, not at all." But the way I looked at that was like, wow, guys, like we really need to humanize ourselves more so that we can relate to these people and that they understand that, everybody starts at square one, but we're here to help you get better. Another big thing, guys, and I'm sure everybody on this call hears about this all the time, but you really want to spend as much time as you can with your new people outside the office, because it's just a different environment. When you're in the office, you're suited and booted. There's a certain vibe to it. There's a certain, outlook to it. And, it's kind of business all the time. But when you get your guys outside the office, and you guys are in street clothes and, you're just hanging out, it's a different vibe. And again, that humanizes you even more. And it lets you dig deeper into, not just knowing what those people are into and where they come from, but it also, does the same for them. And it shows them that like, yeah, this is a real person. This isn't like this robot machine that was built to go door to door every day. Right. Yeah. Outside influences are huge, guys. And, for me, when I was coming through the training program, any opportunity I got to give a guy a ride back to their home, I wanted to do it. They'd be like, "Hey, I'm an hour away." And I'm like, "Great, man. It's only midnight. Well, I'll get home by 3, right?" Like I'm down, and I'd take that opportunity anytime I could because, not only did I want to further that relationship and spend more time, but when I would get to their house, I'd always ask them to, use the restroom, because if I went in and I used their bathroom, you got mom over there, girlfriend, brother, sister, whoever that they live with that's in their ear constantly. I get the chance to meet them. And, everybody, I'm sure, whether it's your parents that don't feel great about the business or you have people on your team that feel that way, I think when they meet, that leader that's training their kid, on a daily basis, it really does a lot for them because they always envision us as, being in our 60s, 70s, 80s and just employing guys to go out and work for us. Then they meet you and they're like, "Oh, this is awesome. This is Van. Wow. Like this isn't what I expected." But also, guys, we're going to be way better at explaining the opportunity, than our new guys are. And, the new guys are going back and they're like, "Yeah, in 6 months, I'll be making $3,000 a year." And, management parents are like, "Okay, why? How does that work?" And, they're not going to be able to answer those questions. So then we come in and we bring some sense to it. And we're like, "Well, this isn't, nobody's getting rich quick here. Like, this is how it works. Like, our clients need us to grow and expand for them. So, learn sales, learn how to manage a team, and then we'll teach you to run an office." And, us being the ones that can explain that, a lot of time, not only does that make their outside influences feel better about it, but, it's also going to make their outside influences sometimes be more bought into it and get in their corner and start pushing them a little bit. That's a huge part of it. And I know I've had conversations with girlfriends, boyfriends, and, it went from "I hate this, quit this" to "Hey, how many sales did you do this week? Like how many guys did you start this week? When are we going to be in management?" Right. And, me being able to expedite that not only helps them with not having to deal with as many challenges outside the office, but again, it's also going to get them more bought into me as a leader because that's me taking that extra step to help them to be more focused in the training program and ultimately have more success. And the last part of this, guys, would be, the type of relationship that, you're building initially and, professional versus unprofessional. And I get questions about this all the time. And look, it is a hard line to draw. But at the end of the day, I really liked a few weeks ago when Richard Anderson was talking about recruiting. And, he related a good mentor to like a great coach that you had where, you really, really liked that coach, but you didn't look at them as a friend. You respected them. And, he said, "Hey, you'd be terrified to ask them to go out for a beer." Like that's how you look at them. Like you love them and you respect them, but you would never cross that line. And like, that's the line that I want to draw initially, because ultimately, guys, that's what's going to get them more bought into me. Like nobody started their career to make friends. They started their career to have an opportunity and to have success and whatever that means for them. So I want them to respect me in that way. And, you got to understand that there's things that you want to do and don't want to do to kind of set those boundaries. I mean, for me specifically, I always draw the line when guys start talking about, partying, what they're doing over the weekend, like, how many beers they drank, whatever it is. I always draw that line and just kind of change the subject. And my go-to line for that is always like, hey, Van, that's great, man, but let's focus on this pitch. All right, I got to teach you the script. And I start to draw that boundary because, again, guys, like, new guys, we've all been there. We're trying to see what those boundaries are. We're trying to see how far I can take this relationship, what I can and can't get away with. So I want to, without making it awkward, just keep it professional, and keep us on topic. I never want to talk about religion. I never want to talk about politics. I always want to change those subjects right away. But also, one thing I learned through failure was, there's a lot of things that, new guys are going to judge about you, that you're not really understanding a lot of the time. And, one of those things will be like the music that you're playing in the car ride, or an atmosphere. If you're out there playing like hardcore rap and you're playing WAP and all this stuff, like, totally, there might be some people that are like, dude, this is my jam, but there's going to be other people that are like, what is going on here? This is so unprofessional. Like, I cannot see myself building a career in this place. How much profanity you use? I mean, look, there's a time and a place. Like, we are by no means clean by the mouth. Like, we curse, we do those things, but there's a time and a place, guys. And if every other word out of your mouth is the F word, that's going to turn a lot of people off, right? So understanding that you're being judged on that. How you treat people, right? Like, we get, depending on your program, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 interactions with strangers every day. And, the way that you deal with the challenging customers will either build a respect for you as a person or will turn somebody off to you, right? And now keep in mind, guys, what I want to attract is sharp people. So if I'm training somebody and a customer gets rude to me and I start mouthing off to them and then walk away and my new guy's like, yeah, that's what I would have done too. That's not who I want to retain. I want to retain the sharp person that, again, wants an opportunity and wants to be in a professional environment. So I'll take you back a little bit without going crazy, but I was training a new guy in the field when I was in the training program, and we were out in Pennsylvania on our second lap, and, we hit this guy's door and he came down and he was, not happy. I think his kid was in bed or something like that. And he kind of just was dismissive to us. And, I walked away and was kind of just like, man, that guy was a jerk and whatever. And, my new guy on his first day was like, it's all right, man. Like, we'll get the next one. Like, don't worry about it. And dude, my heart sank. I was like, wow, I'm terrible. Obviously that guy didn't come back the next day. And again, like, you're being judged on all of these things. And, the last part of that I really wanted to hit on was, you guys, you have to understand, your overall organization as a person is also, building an either a professional or unprofessional image of you, right? Like, what's your car look like when people get into it? What do your materials look like? What does your binder look like? If, you invited your guy over to, hang out at the apartment or something like that on a Sunday, what does your apartment look like? You know what I mean? Like, how organized are you? Because again, people are judging you by that. There's been times when I went to promote an assistant manager and I had somebody walk up to me and were like, hey, I don't know if I can follow this guy. Like, I've been to his house. I've seen him outside the office. I don't know if there's much I can learn. And I was like, wow, okay. I got to start being better about teaching that. And again, guys, all of these things go into building a relationship. But what we need to understand is there's a type of relationship that we want to have with our guys where they really like us and respect us, but they're not looking at us as their best friend, right? Like, best friends are the ones that are going to push you to do all the wrong things. Mentors are the ones that are going to drive you, hold you accountable, and push you to be better. And that's the type of relationship that we want to build initially and build that trust and relationship moving forward to help that person grow and be part of our team long term.
Wow. That was awesome. Guys, please fire questions away in the chat. I have a question before you get to the next slide, Austin. So when I know that the hard part for people is when they start having multiple people on their team, right? So let's say, because you can't do all these things with everybody all at once. I think that's the challenge for people when they start having 4, 5, 6 people on their crew, how to manage their time and who to spend time with. So how do you look at, like, when you have 4 or 5 guys and you can't spend, every weekend with all of your people? How do you manage that? Who do you spend time with? What are the qualities you look for in terms of cherry picking?
Man, that's a great question. And this is something I failed at up front. I think a lot of times we try to spend all of our time with the person that we're trying to prevent from quitting instead of giving it to the guys that are showing us that, they really want to be here and they're putting in all the effort. And again, that is such a trap to fall into. If you're spending all the time with somebody that you're just trying to prevent from quitting when that's inevitable, you're going to lose 2 guys because you're going to lose that guy. He's not the right fit. but you're also going to lose the guy that was really hungry but needed help because he's never going to turn it around and get better. So I look at the people personally that, are showing all the right things. Maybe their production isn't there. Maybe they're struggling to build a team, but they're great students. They're coachable. They're showing up early and staying late. They're working hard. They're applying the things that are being taught. For me, in a perfect world, I would spend all of my time with them.
Yeah, that's very smart. You spend, there's been so many people, if you look back and on all of our careers, it was spending too much time with the wrong people, trying to lift everybody up as opposed to identifying, okay, who are the people that actually want it, who are putting in the effort and, investing in those people. So that's really good stuff. All right, let's get to the next slide.
All right, guys. Next, we're talking about setting the tone. And again, this kind of goes back into the last part of what we talked about before, where, I want to set the tone for what is and isn't normal in our training program. And you really, we talk about first impressions a lot in our office, but really the way that somebody's developed early on and what they're shown early on is going to be what they carry with them throughout their entire training program and beyond. So, one thing that, I want to make sure that, I do a really good job with is just kind of setting initial standards. And, I learned when I was going through the training program that, your new guys are going to imitate 80% of your good habits, but they're going to imitate 150% of your bad habits. Right. And, I kind of relate that to learning a language early on. Like, you're going to learn the language that's spoken in your household, but you're only going to know about 80% of it compared to your parents because you're in early development. Right. And, as opposed to any slang that you hear or curse words, you're going to be saying that nonstop. And, trust me, I have a 16-month-old daughter, and, I got to watch my tongue around her because I don't want her to start spitting those things off. But, all the good we do, they're only going to do about 80% of it. But all the bad that I do, what time I get into the field, how I act with customers, how focused and hardworking I am throughout the day, what time I show up in the morning, when I leave at night, they're gonna imitate 150% of those bad habits. So I want to set the right expectations and standards from day one. The mindset that I always go into is, what would I want to see from these guys, or what would I expect from them when it comes to the point when I'm not in the field every day anymore? Because again, guys, like, that's the whole point. Like, you're building a foundation from the ground up that's going to, hopefully be a skyscraper for you. And if, you haven't built it strong from the ground, then it's never going to grow up top and stay sufficient. Right. So what would I want to see, or what would I expect from these guys when they're the ones running car rides, they're the ones doing interviews, they're the ones training every day when I'm not in the field anymore? And, one thing that, I always loved when I worked with Power Home Remodeling Group is, their CEO ran a meeting for us one time. And, he told us, like, look, guys, when it comes to standards, don't ever drop your standards to make, worse people feel good about it. Always keep them high so that great people have to rise up to them. And, that's what I want to do from square one. I don't want to, break the boundaries and break the standards to try to retain worse people. Like, I don't want, when my new guy comes in and shows up late, I'm not like, it's okay, buddy. Like, no, I got to take that time to set the bar right there. And if he doesn't want to show up on time, like, that's great. I want that guy to move on and find something else. But, great people, when you set those standards and they know that there is a standard, it's going to make them want to rise up to it. If I set a really high bar for Van, he's going to live up to it or die trying, right? Like, that's just how we are. And those are the type of people that we want to retain and develop long-term. When it comes to setting the expectations, I also have to think about training, right? Like, one really important thing I think comes down to training is, setting the deadlines and expectations. So something as simple as the pitch, like, I think we all know how important that pitch is. I mean, it's, part of our system, right? Where, we'll give you the words to say. And as long as you work hard and have a great attitude, you'll find results. You don't have to be this great salesperson. So, for me, when I'm training people initially, I'm setting expectations on, like, hey, here's this pitch. We're going to work on it, but I expect you to be studying this behind the scenes when you go home as well. Because, the faster we get this down, the quicker I can teach you to make $1,000 and get you into account management, right? So by Wednesday, if today's Monday, I expect you to have this whole thing memorized. I'll help, but I also expect you to come in every day with more of it memorized than you did when we left the night before, right? And again, setting that bar from square one, ultimately is going to give you somebody that has a higher standard for themselves as well. I'm giving my guys homework, because I want to see how committed they are. I'm giving them things to work on the night before, take back and bring home the next day. And then at the end of that, I'm holding them accountable if they didn't come through with it. So, if I said, hey, man, by, tomorrow when you come in, let's make sure we have up to here memorizing the script. They come in the next morning and I say, hey, let's work on what we talked about you haven't memorized. And they say, oh, I didn't get to it. I'm not going to like blast them for it, right? But I'm going to say, hey, what happened, man? I thought we agreed like you were going to have this memorized. And they're like, I know, I'm sorry, I will moving forward. And again, them knowing that I'm not just telling them to do things but never following up on it is also going to build this culture of accountability that is super, super important when it comes to being a leader. I got to show what I'm teaching, right? So, when it comes to developing people, if I'm not backing up everything I'm talking about with my action, then, I'm going to be in a hard place. And, one thing that I've seen a lot of people screw up with is, when a new guy starts, they'll hand them a pitch to memorize, but then they'll go out on the field and they'll do something completely different. And if I'm a new guy, I'm looking at that, I'm like, wait, I want to do the one you're doing, right? Why are you teaching me one thing and then, doing something else, right? So, making sure that all those things line up, again, working hard, having an insane work ethic and showing that and leading that by example, showing them how to deal with tough times, showing them positivity, showing them how to walk away from a tough interaction, and then being deadlocked on the system that you're preaching every day. If you're saying, hey, we talk to 25 or 30 people a day, show that. If you're saying, hey, when we talk to those people, we present to 7 or 8 of them, make sure you show that. Everything that you teach, you've got to back up. And, one of the coolest things I ever heard, Matt Kelly came to my office when I first came onto the Frontier program, and he was talking about Al Basada, who, I don't want to screw this up, but I'm pretty sure he went out to Asia and opened up all these offices out there. And obviously Al didn't speak, any of those languages. So, Matt told us that he had to teach just by showing people every day. And I was like, oh my God, that's so insane. Like literally he couldn't communicate with them verbally. So he just showed them everything through what he did. So I looked at that and said, wow, like I've got to do the same thing. And again, guys, with all these things lining up, it's super important to make sure that you're showing what you preach. And then the last part of that being setting boundaries, guys. So, again, we already talked about this, but, guys are going to try to get away with and see what they can get away with. And I want to set those boundaries from square one. Like, no, dude, you cannot call out on your second day. No, you cannot show up 30 minutes late. No, if you have a doctor's appointment at 8 in the morning, you cannot be out for the rest of the day. I want to set these boundaries from square one. And what I always teach is like, look, if that's enough to make somebody leave the training program because they wanted to be able to call out 2 times a week, then trust me, you don't want that person on your crew. But again, guys, you setting these boundaries for these new guys, it's what's going to retain a good person and make them see value in the training program because they're looking at it and saying, hey, man, these guys don't play. They're here for the right reasons, and they're not just going to have anybody here. Like, I feel better about being with this company.
Nice. So I have a question, and we have a question in the chat, which we'll get to. So when I was new, the scariest thing for me was a critical conversation. And I know guys are, they think that when they have someone on their team, because your topic is setting the tone, they think that sometimes a tough conversation will make that person quit. But your topic is retention. And what many guys don't realize is that tough conversation is actually the reason why they stay. So can you go over a little bit about how you would teach like a newer leader that is afraid of those critical conversations, how to go about them, when to pull them in, like when do you do it? And then like, what's the way you go about it?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the first rule to that is don't do it around other people, right? Because you don't ever want to embarrass somebody. But I would always tell my new guys like, hey, what would you do if I wasn't here? What would you say to them? And they're going to give me something. And obviously it's not going to be probably what we would want them to say. So then we're going to practice the conversation together. We're going to say, hey, look, this is how I would do it. I'll be the guy, you be you. Let's practice it. And then when that guy gets in, pull him to the side and have the conversation. And again, I think what, like you just said, Van, retention doesn't just mean I'm trying to keep everybody. It also means I'm trying to push away the wrong people. So, with me pulling a guy to the side, a part of his development is like, hey, look, you're great, but, you come in with the wrong attitude every day. And if you don't fix that, you'll never accomplish what you want to. If that turns a guy off, then, again, good riddance. But what that'll also do is it'll take the right people to the next level. And that's always going to be my goal. And look, yeah, critical conversations are scary, man. Like just like anything else, just like knocking on doors for the first time, just like doing interviews for the first time. But until you start doing them regularly, you're never going to get confident or comfortable doing them.
Yeah, for sure. Good stuff.
All right, guys. So the next thing I wanted to go over is managing expectations. So, obviously, when we're starting new guys, I mean, we put so much into it. We get to leadership, we're ringing the bell every day. We're doing all these interviews. We do 3 in a week, none of them start. And then finally one person starts and we're so excited about it. We're looking at it like, every time that happens, the light gets a little bit brighter at the end of the tunnel. But what I don't want to do is just start drilling them with information that is going to overwhelm them or turn them off. Like, I'll see new leaders, with a guy on their first day, and, they haven't even given them the pitch script yet. And they're on the boards, like, breaking down overrides. And they're like, Austin has 6 offices. Like, this is how much he's making. And the guy's like, whoa, what the hell? Or you'll have like, brand new guys and their leaders, and they're like, listen, man, I'm opening up in Alaska at the end of summer. You're coming with me. You're my first promotion. You're my first outside deal. Like, we're in this together. We're partners. And then the next day, it's like, you see the guy when Atmos starts, like the leader's like creeping around. He's like looking for his new guy. And he's like, hey, have you seen Johnny? Like, yeah, dude, you probably got a head start to Alaska, bro. Like, that probably wasn't the right conversation to have, right? Like, it's overwhelming, man. Like, either it's going to make them look at it and say, oh my God, this is too much. Or, they could take it the wrong way and think, man, these people just need people to work for them. Like, they just need people to be on their team. I don't want to be a part of that. So, you want to look at your new guys like kind of like a plan. Like, you don't want to underwater them and you don't want to overwater them, right? You want to give them just enough information, to get them to the next step, and as they're getting better, you want to teach them more. I don't want to be covering like, on their first day or week. I don't want to be talking about running my own business and, managing expenses and gross profit and net profit. Like, I want to keep all of that stuff for later. I want to set realistic and motivational goals every single day. And, goals were huge for me, guys, coming in. Like, I remember how much I loved having my day broken down because it simplified everything for me. Like, it was so great seeing AM and PM goals for the next day because I was never one that could create, but I could follow instruction. So having a leader that, gave me, hey, if you work on these things tomorrow morning, this is the result you'll get when you're in the field. And if you focus on these things when we're in the field, this is how you're going to get better tomorrow. I want to give those guys those goals every day so that I can create clarity for them. But also I want to make sure that they're motivated by it. I want to give them things they'll accomplish so that they feel like they're getting better and they don't just feel like they're spinning their wheels, right? How many talk tos they should be getting per day, how many presentations they should get. I want to make sure that I'm talking about, how much money they should make per week. I want to under promote and over deliver there. Like, I don't ever want to back myself into a corner because I'm making successes seem like failures, right? Like, if I have a new guy come in and I'm like, listen, man, you're going to make $2,000 a week. Well, now when he makes $1,000 in a week, he's going to feel like that was a failure and he's going to feel like that's terrible. And I don't ever want to back myself into that corner, guys. And, I always taught, again, under promote and over deliver. Undersell what's going to happen and what you're going to get done, and over deliver on that so that they're always feeling the success of everything that you're doing.
That's awesome.
All right. Questions, or are we moving on?
We got a question here. I think I want to save it to the end because it kind of talks about the whole thing. So we'll save that question for the end, and I'll have some questions as well. I've already written them down, so we'll keep them moving.
Awesome. All right, guys. And the last thing is building confidence. And this is super important. Like, what we have to understand is that everything the guys do on a daily basis is already going to break them. It's already going to humble them. It's already going to get them out of their comfort zone. And it's already going to make them lose confidence because it's different, right? It's not like checking somebody into a restaurant. It's not like managing the shipments coming into a warehouse. It's a different environment. It's upbeat. It's aggressive. There's people everywhere. You're going out and talking to 30 strangers a day and hearing no's. I don't want to be the person that's, breaking that confidence even more. I want to be the person that's building it as much as I possibly can. So a really, really easy way of doing that is by simplifying the training, right? And making it really easy for somebody to understand what they need to be working on every day in order to have success. And the one thing that I'm always harping on is the system itself and teaching pitch, pace, and attitude. I'm always teaching like, look, we'll give you everything to say and show you everything to do. As long as you can work hard and have a good attitude every day, you'll have success. And I'm putting everything back on pitch, pace, and attitude. Look, learn these words. I'll show you how fast to move. We'll teach you how to manage your attitude, and you'll be able to make $1,000 a week. And you'll also be able to teach that back and start building a team. Focus on one big thing at a time. This is a challenge I had when I was, in the field. I would be training somebody, and like every time they opened their mouth, I would start to correct a different thing, right? Instead of just focusing on what is the biggest thing that they need to work on and keeping it at that, right? If I'm in the field with a new guy, there are a million things I could probably correct. Just like Ken and Larry and Matt listening to my call right now, there's probably a million things they want to correct. But what you want to focus on is the one big thing at a time, so that you're not overwhelming this guy and you're still making sure that they're getting better on a daily basis. Don't teach 30 things at once. You got to encourage guys a ton. I mean, again, they're going to get broken constantly. I want to be like their hype man. Like I want to be like their cheerleader. I'm like always hyping them up. Like they could just say, "Hi, my name's Austin." And I'm like, dude, you're the best that's ever come through here. Right. And I'm like pulling them over to a leader and I'm like, dude, give them that intro. And they're like, "Hi, my name's Austin." They're like, the leader's like, "Oh my God, you're a prodigy." I remember there were like, when I went on an expansion, on my initial expansion to Chicago, one of my leaders, Michael, I mean, I had built him up so hard and he was a fresh leader when we went out there. So I was teaching these things and I was talking about building them up and making them feel like they were born for it. And he was like, I saw him like look down and I'm like, "Yeah, Michael, what's the matter?" He's like, "Dude, like you do this for everybody?" He's like, "Dude, I really thought I was like born to be like, I was born for this." Like he's like, "Damn, it makes sense." But like, I thought I was the best ever. I was like, "Michael, you are, don't worry, man." But I want to be that guy. Like I want to make them more confident than they should be. And I think great leaders kind of bring that out of people. It's like, when we talk about high level leadership, it's getting guys to be more excited and confident than maybe they should be, because that's going to drive their performance and development, right? The field's going to break them. Everything they're doing is going to break them. But what I want to be for them guys is I want to be the thermostat for their confidence thermometer. And, the way that I always look at it is, if my guy's confidence is on a level of 0 to 10, I always want to make sure they're at a 7 or an 8, right? If they're at anything below a 7, I want to be encouraging them and building them up. And once they get above that 8 or 9 and they're like, I rule the office, I'm the man, like that's when I can start to really criticize. Because remember, guys, breaking isn't like chewing somebody out. Like hopefully you're not doing that. Criticizing somebody breaks them. Even if it's the most pleasant criticism in the world, it breaks them and it humbles them. So I can't be drilling my guys when they're struggling. They're not going to be receptive to it. Like if my guy went out and did 0 and I'm like, "Come on, let's get on the boards," and I'm teaching them things for an hour, like, dude, they're not going to be listening. They're not paying attention because their meter is so low and their confidence is so low. So what I'm always trying to do is build them up to that 7 or an 8. And as soon as they get above that, that's when I really start to teach them things and use a little bit of criticism to take them to the next thing that we're working on. I want to include them in the field in the sales process. And I want to make them feel like they're a part of the process in general. So, when I'm in the field, again, like if we go out on our first day and, all this guy did was say, "Hi, my name's Van," and we close that customer, like I'm putting that sale under their name and I'm like, "Dude, this is yours." And they're like, "No way." I'm like, "Bro, if you didn't say your name was Van that way, we would not have gotten this person. Like you introed that so well." And I want them to look at that and not only say, "Wow, like, okay, I had a part of this," but I also want them to see that I got their back, right? And that they are actually going to make money and they're not out there just working for free, right? I think that's super important. And then guys, the last part of this with empathy versus sympathy, this kind of ties into the entire thing and what we're talking about. Empathy versus sympathy is a super, super important part of building the right relationship and developing people long term. So empathy is the ability to understand and share the feelings of others, whereas sympathy is feelings of sorrow and pity for someone else's misfortunes, right? So I never, ever, ever want to have sympathy for my guys. I always want to do everything based off empathy because, again, anything that they're going to go through, we've all gone through already. Now, maybe life's going to throw different challenges at them, but like, Van and I and none of us, we're not like abstract of challenges. Like we all have life problems. We all have things going on, but we don't just call out. We don't just not show up and we don't just ruin a whole day because of those things. But when you start coaching based off of sympathy, again, what you're developing initially is just somebody who's dependent on somebody to make them feel better constantly. I always want to drive all of my conversation based off an understanding of where they're coming from, but moving that into what they need to start doing moving forward to have success in spite of those things. And if you right out of the gate can get somebody to understand that life's going to be tough, but nobody's going to care and you've got to keep moving and pushing on, you're going to have a way stronger person long term. Yeah. So that's what I got, Van. I don't know if there's any questions.
No, that's great, guys. And please ask questions. We're going to get to the first question here in a second, but I want to ask you, Austin. And first of all, this was so good. Like I'm ready to go run this meeting for my guys again and recap it because there's so many things that I've just taken away from this meeting. But the whole thing of like building confidence, because I think a lot of guys in the beginning, they struggle with the concept of like perfection versus progress, right? And so they get too caught up on whether someone's pitch is perfect, as opposed to what you're talking about is it's way more about how they feel about themselves rather than what you think, where you think they should be. And if you can get a person that's feeling good about themselves, then usually that's where the progress can happen. How do you draw the line for a person that's maybe struggling in their first week, right? where they're progressing, but they're not at the level you think they should be? Like, how do you handle those people? And where do you draw the line in terms of, okay, this person needs to leave the business, or let's keep giving them a shot?
Yeah, it's a great question, man. For me, it always comes back to the thing that you can control from day one, which is your effort. Like, you might not be great, you might not have confidence, you might not be good at the pitch, but you can have 100% effort from day one. And if somebody's still showing the effort, if somebody's still coming in early, they're still working hard, they're still asking questions, then I know that I can make that person better. And for me, guys, and I guess the only people on this call that would really know it would be Ken and Maddie. But when I came in, again, I was fresh out of the Marine Corps infantry. I was still transitioning into the civilian world. I had a lot of, problems with, things from the past. I was, lacked confidence. I had, low self-esteem. Like, it was really, really, really hard for me to be in the field. But one thing I did have was work ethic and, intensity. And I remember my first week, I mean, I showed up at 9:30 and all the leaders were just kind of standing outside drinking monsters. And they were like, what are you doing here? And I was like, well, you guys told me if I show up earlier, I can grow faster. Like, I want to do that. And so, like, if you still have that from somebody, regardless of what their results are right away, that long-term, guys, to me is probably one of the most successful qualities that a person can have, is just they give everything maximum effort, because that in the long run, if they're around the right leaders, is going to make them better, as opposed to somebody who's crushing it, but they don't put in, any effort. Right. To me, I'm not as excited about that person as I am about the person that's trying their butt off, but they're just struggling in the moment.
Yep. And it seems like another part of retention is, you talked about a little bit earlier, is it's not about just retaining people. It's about removing people who are not supposed to be there. Right. And you guys can lose a lot of your best people by allowing certain behavior to exist, and there's no consequence or there's no punishment to it. So what are the behaviors, Austin, that you say enough is enough? Like, this person's got to go, because you have the good people. Let's say you have 2 or 3 guys in your team, you like them, they're sharp. And then you got this total knucklehead who's doing all this stuff. I think a lot of guys get confused on what to do in those circumstances, because they think they got to retain everybody. So first of all, what's the behavior that you look at and say that's enough is enough? And then when you see the behavior, how do you go about addressing it and fixing it with your manager?
Yeah. So, I was always taught addition by subtraction is sometimes necessary. Like, sometimes, the whole office's growth is being held back because of one bad apple. And, there are all the common signs. There's somebody that shows up late or calls out constantly. There's somebody that just is always kind of trying to build the negball army, we call it. Like, they're always like behind the scenes. Like, you catch them in the room with a new guy and they're just like, man, what about your customers? Didn't they suck? Like, they're just always negging somebody out. Like, those are toxic signs that I look for that drop the bar and kind of bring down everybody's morale and motivation. So if I'm a guy in the office, what I'm doing is I'm going to the manager and just being honest, like, hey, Van, this guy is doing this, this, and that, and I don't think he's the right fit. What do you think? And typically where that conversation is going to go is, hey, let me talk to him. And I know both of us would probably pull that guy in, give him a bottom line conversation. And if we continue to see it, it already opened the door to us letting him go. But again, guys, you getting rid of people not only is sometimes necessary, but it also sets a higher standard, and it motivates the other people that are coming in doing all the right things every day, because they're not getting the same level of attention as a guy that's extremely negative and not putting in anywhere as near as much effort as they are.
Yeah. Yeah. You said addition by subtraction, right? It's many times it's what we allow is what we get. And so if we allow bad behavior, it's going to spread out. It's kind of like the kid in class that's pulling all the pranks. If the teacher doesn't set the tone, the rest of the class just goes nuts. And next thing you know, the whole class is out of control. And so if you're a leader and you're worried about, a person with bad behavior, low sales, unprofessionalism, get with your owner, say, hey, we got to handle this conversation now, because it's going to bleed into the rest of the crew. We have a question, which I think it has to do with kind of like managing a whole team. And maybe this helps with retention of your better people, but it says, once you start building like a management team, how do you delegate or use critical teaching moments while being professional? So you see someone that's sort of like your second in command, but they're shutting down a positive environment, or they're overbearing during meetings. So how do you teach people who's kind of like your next person up? How do you have critical conversations with them when you feel like they're messing up?
The same way you would anybody else. I mean, I had to have, I'll just speak from experience. I came into the training program really motivated and hard charger, but was very, very rough around the edges. And I remember I was probably 3 or 4 months in, and I was building a nice team. And, there was a girl that was in our office who was in the Air Force. And for me, just being out of the Marine Corps was like this big rivalry. And I remember I kind of, in the meeting while she was presenting, I jokingly, I thought, but I like cursed and kind of like trashed the Air Force. And Ken, I looked over at Ken and he was just giving me the death stare. And I was like, I was like, oh my God. And he pulled me in after and was like, dude, like, how do you expect people to take you seriously when you're acting like that in the meeting? And it made sense to me. And again, like with your top guys, they're even more open to coaching than a brand new guy. You just have to, pull them aside and not just correct them, but tell them, why, if they make that change, it's going to benefit them, their brand, their image, and their team moving forward.
Yeah. So you just can't be afraid. No matter how good a guy is, you have to have those critical conversations. And ultimately, those are the people that you want to have them with even more, is your better people. Because you want them to be as good or better than you. And the only way you get there is by coaching them. I love this question right here. It's from Isaiah. How do you feel about pace versus building relationships in the field? Which is more important for new guys from a leader standpoint?
What's up, Isaiah? It's a great question, man. So they're not mutually exclusive, man. I can do both things. Now, I will say that like I've seen leaders that their thing is like, I'm gonna break this guy, and like that's not what I want to do, man. Like I could have a great person that maybe can't keep up with my pace. I don't want to turn them off to the whole training program and make them again lose confidence and feel like they can't do it because they can't sprint through the field all day, right? Like I couldn't either. So there's got to be a decent pace, but the only time I'm really trying to correct it is if the person's stopping and they're on their phone, right? Like as long as we're moving and we're hitting the right amount of talk tos on a daily basis so I can show them the system, the relationship building is way, way, way more important than sprinting through the field every day.
Yeah. I think it's one of those things too, like when guys think, I've seen it go way too far the opposite way, where people are, they're just walking way too fast, and I get it, but they're not building relationship while they're doing it. So I've seen people in the field where they're literally like 6 feet ahead of their trainee and they're not even talking to them. They're walking to the next door, they're pitching people, they're sprinting to the next door, and it's like this weird, awkward silence. And it's like, you got to carry the conversation. Like you got to keep things going. You have to be a normal person out there on top of showing them the work ethic, which obviously is super important.
Not to mention, man, that, those are the times when the leader comes back and they're like, dude, I crushed that retrain. And then, you're settling the new guy up and you're like, how'd it go? And they're like, oh, it was interesting. And, they don't come back the next day because, there wasn't a relationship built there. It was just like, they looked at it and they're like, no way, I could never do this.
Yeah. You can come across super unrelatable and it's just weird.
Mm-hmm.
I got a question here. It says, follow you do? This is a little bit of a weird question. I'm going to try to figure this out. What do you do with new hires in the first week to retrain them? Okay, that's what the question is. So when you have a new hire in their first week, what's your best way to, like, I guess, train them and get them up to speed quickly?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, what I would be reluctant to do is talk about like how we train specifically, because that's different in every office. But again, it goes back to everything that we just covered, man. Like I want to build a great relationship, but I also want to set really strong expectations that are reasonable, right? Like me giving a guy a 1-page script and saying, I expect you to have this memorized, by the end of your third day. That's a realistic expectation. And, kind of specifically, my thought on that is I see people teaching irrelevant things too often and not focusing on what matters. For me, pitch comes before everything, right? Like if my guy doesn't know his whole pitch, then I probably shouldn't be teaching Fuji factors, because if they don't know how to, pitch somebody, them knowing how to use Jones effect really won't matter all that much. So I want to give them structure and keep it simple, but set really strong expectations and get them confident that by, a week's time in training or whatever it is in your office, they know everything they need to know to get out there and do well. And the only other thing I'd add to that is I want to make it fun in the field. So, I want to show them that even with, tough conversations, even when a customer, comes out and they're like, look, we're not interested, I'm buttoning up that interaction and like, hey man, thank you so much for your time. You have a great day. And I'm showing them, man, no matter what the outcome from the customer is, we're just trying to build good relationships and move on so that we can find the people that have an interest. So if I'm keeping things simple, I'm setting strong expectations, I should get somebody out of training quicker and better.
Yeah, that's such a good point. And I think it leads me to my next question, which I think was probably the hardest thing for me in terms of retention or dealing with the term retention, was when you invest and you put all this time in, you do everything right? You do the dinner, you meet the spouse, you spend Sundays with your guy, you have the one-on-ones, they ring the bell, they're on their way, and they still quit, or they still leave the business, or they still fall off because it's just not for them. How do you handle that? Because I think what happens to a lot of people when they're building teams is because of the result, the outcome of what happens to a person, they start to judge whether or not they actually can continue to build people. And it's sort of like they lose faith in developing and retaining people because they get so caught up in the outcome of one person. So how did you get into like this mindset of not like getting too heartbroken to the point where you stop believing in love in terms of, falling in love with guys and building those new relationships? Because I think that's the hardest part of building teams, is going through the losses of your teams and then getting back on the horse and building them again.
Well, I got better at it by getting heartbroken, right? Like, having these guys that I was in love with and they didn't show up and I was so upset. But I really took everything that the field teaches us guys. Everything's a numbers game. I mean, I could pitch 30 customers a day perfectly, but I'm not going to sign up 30 people. And the mindset of I'm not focused on the no's, I'm focused on the yeses is something that I've taken through my entire career, right? And that's the same thing in building a team. You could do everything right, but people are still going to fall off. And you can't look at the people that have fallen off. You got to look at the people that are here that want to do well. But also, like anything else, I've got to take every failure as a learning opportunity. So I don't care what happened. If somebody left or somebody fell off and I was excited about them, I'm always going to be critical of myself as to how I could have done it better. Because again, they're gone, but I want to make sure that I keep improving my game so that when the guys are coming in constantly, I can make them better. And that's the beauty of it. If I lose a guy today, I'm going into Van's office and saying, hey, Van, I need another interview. He's going to send me with one and I'll have another guy to work with the very next day.
Yeah. The hard part for sure is getting used to the idea and the concept that, this is hard. And, when you're looking to build a team, you're looking for that top 10%, right? We're looking for that top 10% of work ethic, top 10% of attitude, top 10% of student mentality. And so going into building a team and retaining people, you're not just going to retain people because you want to. You're going to retain people because you do the right things and it's the right time for them and they're the right person. And you got to see a lot of people, right? You got to do a lot of interviews. I was telling my guys, I took 85 interviews out in the field before I built my management team. And then, getting into ownership. I mean, it's insane how many prelims you have to do to find those special people, because first of all, we don't even bring everybody back for interviews. We disqualify a ton of people. So it's like kind of like the field where you guys got to hire people. And then those first couple of weeks is a part of you either qualifying or disqualifying them for the training program. And that's just a part of the game. So I thought all these questions are great. Let's see if we have one more. Oh, wow. The questions start pumping in. All right. We're going to knock these out real quick. This is Ayana. How do you know when to let someone go if they say they don't want to go? Should there be a limited time to train them in order to see if they're a good fit?
Man, that's a tough one, Ayana. It really is situational. I mean, because again, words don't speak as loud to me as actions. So if somebody's like, no, I want to be here, but again, like they're showing up late, they're not receptive to the advice, they're not applying the advice, then that's where the conversation comes in, where I'm telling them that. And I'm saying like, okay, like you tell me that, but that's like somebody telling me they want to be in great shape, but they're crushing cheeseburgers and not working out, right? Like same thing. I need to see more from you. And these are the things I need to see. And what that's doing, Ayan, is it's setting the expectation that if they meet that and they start doing the right things, then we'll want them there because obviously they'll progress. But if they're not doing those things, it already opened the door for me to have that last conversation of, hey, this isn't the right fit.
Yeah. Okay. Last question. Azarel, how do you change your perspective on being in the training program from early on, not having great relationship with your leader, gravitating towards other leaders who invested more in you? How do you now continue without the other leaders who built your confidence up?
Well, that's a good question, Azarel. I mean, those leaders haven't vanished into Mars, right? Like they're still around, even if they've gone on an expansion. We use Zoom for everything we do now. So you can get the same advice from them with the same feeling of being next to them every single day. But that's part of the process. I mean, look, I'll tell you right now, my leader was not a good example at all. I mean, did all the wrong things, and I won't talk about them on this call, but I just gravitated towards other people I wanted to learn from, but also understanding I was in the training program for myself, not for other people. So, if I really liked a mentor and that mentor quit tomorrow, I don't look at that and say, I'm going to quit. I'm here for my opportunity. I'm appreciative for their advice. I'm appreciative for our relationship, but there's always going to be people that I can learn from and get help from. I'm not doing it or in it for one person.
Yeah, that's so important, because if you get too attached to what other people are doing or what other people think or bad examples, and you just can't let that affect what your goals are. And I think at the beginning of the call, you said, hey, I'm here for a career opportunity. I'm not here just to make buddies. And what people I think forget is that friendships are born through this business, because you guys, you develop a mutual respect for people. You develop these relationships because you go through battles, you win battles, you overcome challenges and obstacles, and you develop great friendships. But if the friendships are built with people who are the right examples, right? Who are people that you want to become more like. And so if there's bad examples around you, you don't really want to continue those relationships. You can let them be, but you want to start focusing on people that you can learn from and that can make you better. So Austin, you crushed it, man. This topic was amazing. Can you go back to your first slide so the guys can see your information?
Yeah, of course.
So guys, there's Austin's phone number. There's his email. Make sure you guys write it down. Austin, thank you so much for sharing your time with us today. I got a ton of notes, and I'm sure there's going to be follow-up questions and follow-up requests to get your time again, but we really appreciate it. And I thought this was a spectacular meeting.
Yeah, thanks so much for the opportunity, Van, and thanks for everybody who signed in. Everybody have a great day.
Everybody take care. Thank you so much.